because Heidi Klum. That's it.
How amazing it is she did the introduction in your book.
Yeah. And she's great to work with. It's so obvious why she's so successful just from watching her for 5 minutes. She's just a great worker, super smart. She knows what she's doing, and she just gets it done.
Dennis, this has been awesome, man.
Eila, you're at the top of your game. You are such an amazing guest. It has been fashion, writing, Broadway. These are 3 things that I love in life, and I think you gave the audience some great lessons. But something that really stands out to me is you have a lot of confidence in yourself.
You have a book that just came out, right?
I do. It's called the Tony Awards, and it's celebrating 75 years of Tony winners. So that was sort of a perfect project for me.
How do you do it?
Just getting to do it, it's not lost on me. So I'm thrilled to get the book in the first place. So that's enough to sustain me until the book is ready to come out. I love what I do so much that I don't need a goal because I've already reached the goal because I'm doing the book. So for me, that's it. And I just, if I'm doing it, I want to do it as well as anybody possibly could. So that's really my goal, to keep doing, better and better work as I go along.
But what did you find about writing that, did you enjoy the first time you did it?
I loved it. Yeah, it was so much fun. I had to get advice from my first editor saying, at some point you just have to stop writing, because I wanted to keep adding to the book. And he said, you have to end it at some point so it can go out there to the world. And that's scary because it's such a solitary endeavor for a long time. And then it does go out to the world and it's like, you feel exposed.
Then you hope that the world likes it and receives it, right?
I know,
yeah,
exactly.
So how did you decide to bridge the gap between theater and fashion and book writing?
Well,
and now podcasting.
And, right.
Welcome to the Apex Lifestyles podcast. I'm your host, Bobgdmd, and here as always with my co-host,
Dennis V. How are you today, Bob?
I'm fantastic, man. What a killer weekend we went through.
Listen, a lot of fun. We are so fortunate that one of our last guests, Kat Greenleaf, invited us down to New York to the famous Algonquin Hotel, where she did her soberness podcast and had some amazing guests.
Yeah, what a great time, man.
Oh,
we're not going to drop the guests on Kat. We'll let Kat drop those, right?
Oh, it's unbelievable.
But what a great time. We drove down 3 hours one way, hung out for 3 or 4 hours, and then drove back home. It was a late night.
Well, it wasn't we were driving. You did all the driving. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, of course, right?
The drive, and that was you bailed me out, so it was incredible. Great time.
Yeah, and for all you listeners out there, I say it every single time. If you subscribe during this show, hit comment, subscribe down at the bottom, and Dennis and I will send you a personalized gift from us. Put a comment down at the bottom if you like what you see. Let us know what you want. Give us some input. It really helps us out. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the bell so you get notified when every upload happens. And after business, is done. Now, Dennis, I'm going to hand it back over to you so you can introduce our guest.
Well, it's just a nice little segue. We were in New York City last week, and we are bringing someone straight from New York City to our audience today, an acclaimed author, fashion expert, Broadway aficionado, a podcast partner, and a new book out, Eila Mell. Welcome to the show.
Hi,
welcome, Mel.
It's
Eila.
so nice to be here.
It is a pleasure to have you. Absolute pleasure.
Thank you.
So, talk about your early aspirations and what led you to pursue a career in fashion and Broadway.
Well, so I always just loved acting at a very young age, and so I was a child actor for 10 years. I pursued that on my own. My parents had to work, so I had to figure it out for myself, and I would take myself to auditions and rehearsals and things like that. And so, yeah, I did that for 10 years. And then I actually was up for a soap opera. And I got down to the final round of auditions. And so I was up against this actress. She was unknown at the time, but her name was Parker Posey. So she got the role. And I just sort of followed her career because you know who gets the parts that you don't. And it gave me the idea for my first book, which was called Casting Might Have Beens. And it was all about people who auditioned for roles that went to others. It was at that point that I decided I really was done with acting and I wanted to write. And that's what I've been doing ever since.
So you have a book that just came out, right?
I do. It's
Yeah,
called the Tony Awards. And it's celebrating 75 years of Tony winners. So that was sort of a perfect project for me, a real dream come true.
What inspired you to write the book of the Tony Awards?
Well, the Tonys actually came to me, which was the best possible scenario. My dear friend Emilio Sosa is the chair of the American Theater Wing, and they wanted to do a book to celebrate their 75th anniversary. So he came to me with the idea and asked if I would be interested in writing the book. And oh my gosh, I was so interested. I was so thankful and just will always be grateful to him for giving me that project.
What type of collaboration and research had to go into that? Because that's 75 years is quite some time.
Yeah,
I know.
There's a lot of people involved in that.
Well, so I worked closely with the American Theater Wing. They provided me with their archives and they connected me with about 150 Tony winners who I got to interview. And it was a lot of research and a lot of talking to people. And that's how I just immersed myself in everything Tony Awards for quite a while. I mean, I don't know if you know, but you don't get a ton of time to write a book. You only have a few months. So it's kind of, a very quick pace, but, I like that. I like working under pressure. And so I don't mind having to go super fast. So it was great. That was my process. It was just really talking to people and getting their stories across, plus the history.
Was there a little sneak peek? Is there a Tony Award winner you spoke to that really stood out to you in conversation?
Gosh. There's so many, but I got to talk to and actually become friends with Carol Burnett. And
wow, that's childhood right there.
Exactly.
That's crazy.
Right? And Mel Brooks, I got to talk to. That was such a thrill. Cheetah Rivera, Nathan Lane, Bernadette Peters, Patti LuPone. I mean, just anyone you could think of pretty much I got to talk to, which was insane for me.
How about Liza Minnelli? Did you connect with her?
Oh my God, I tried, but no, it's very hard to get to Liza these days. I went through her friend and it didn't work out. I was very disappointed.
I mentioned that as last night I actually watched the movie Judy, played by Renee Zellweger.
Okay.
And I actually learned a lot about the life of Judy Garland, which I knew none of that. And then, up until about a year ago, I didn't know that was Liza Minnelli. Judy was her mother. So,
oh my gosh, you must be very straight.
Yeah, it's so, yeah. I mean, so it's just, you see that come together and I mean, obviously the talent's there.
Yeah.
It's absolutely incredible.
Yes.
So I have a question. What inspired you to be a writer?
I
because
just
you
saw
started
it.
as an actress, right?
I know, but I just love the storytelling process. And I don't know, I just felt like this was what I needed to do. I saw it happening. And at that point in my life, I was just really done with acting. But it was hard to switch gears because that was all I knew since I was a kid. Everyone I knew was an actor. And I felt like, well, who am I if I'm not doing this, what I thought I would be doing for my whole life? Little did I know I would still be amongst the same people. But, I had to sort of go away from it for a little while and then come back.
Yeah, that's awesome. So what was the first book you wrote, the first time you picked up pen to paper? What was that?
Well, it was this book called Casting Might Have Beens, and I spent probably a year writing it because nobody was waiting for it. Certainly nobody was waiting for me to write a book. So I figured that the best thing to do was to write the book and then figure out a way to have it published. So I didn't worry about an agent or a manager or a publisher. I just wrote the book because I wanted to see if I could. I had never done it before. So I wanted to make sure I followed through and I did. And then it took 8 years to actually get it published.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's but what did you find about writing that did you enjoy the first time you did it?
I loved it. Yeah, it was so much fun. I had to get advice from my first editor saying, at some point you just have to stop writing because I wanted to keep adding to the book. And he said, you have to end it at some point so it can go out there to the world. And that's scary because it's such a solitary endeavor for a long time. And then it does go out to the world and it's like, you feel exposed.
Then you hope that the world likes it and receives it, right?
I know.
Yeah,
exactly.
So how did you decide to bridge the gap between theater and fashion and book writing.
Well,
And now podcasting.
And, right. Well, I mean, talking is something that comes very natural to me. So podcasting was easy, but it was just things that interested me forever. I figured that's what I would write about. And so I wrote 2 books about, the casting what ifs, one for television and then one for movies and then one for television. And then I just had an idea to write about Fashion Week, New York Fashion Week, because people were so interested in what was happening behind those ropes, because it's really a very glamorous trade show. So it's not open to the public. And I was going to a show and everyone I knew came out of the woodwork to say, if you need someone to go with you, I'd be happy to go. People who didn't care anything about fashion, but they just wanted to see what was happening. And that's what made me realize that people wanted this glimpse into what was happening in those tents at Bryant Park at the time. So that's when I wrote New York Fashion Week. And that started a series of books on fashion.
So here's the question now. What are in those tents?
Well, it's a lot of shows that cost a lot of money, and they're about 11 minutes long, the whole thing. It's over, and all that work that goes, months and months of work is done in 11 minutes. But there's so much excitement beforehand, and if you're backstage before the show interviewing people, and there's, you see the models, and you don't realize when they're made up how young they are. When they come in the door, they look like babies. Because they're teenagers, and, you can spot a model very easily because they're very tall and skinny like you don't see every day on the street, like I'm thin, but I'm not like this. It's just, and most of them are just naturally that thin because they're so young. It's really just a body type, but it's a lot of fun. And it's sort of, Fashion Week is every 6 months, so you get to catch up with. It's like a class reunion. You get to see people who you only see twice a year.
And that's usually September and February, correct?
Exactly. Yeah.
And you're in like the mecca of fashion in the United States, which is great. I've done Fashion Week a few times. And a good friend of our show, Christine Morello, is a celebrity hairstylist, and she has done Fashion Week for years.
Yeah.
And I've talked to her a lot about the ins and outs of, I guess you call it the hustle and bustle backstage. And
it's probably the most fast-paced thing you could ever witness, because everyone there's like 20 or 30 models that have to get ready in the same window of time. And a lot of them are coming from other shows, so they only have, like 10, 15 minutes in some cases. It's crazy, and then it all comes together.
Can you share your best experience or most memorable experience of Fashion Week?
Boy, there's so many. Really, seeing my friends show their designs, or really my friend Michael Costello, who I know from doing the Project Runway book. He was a designer on Project Runway, and now he's had so many successful fashion shows. So watching him show his collection, because he's such a good friend, that's definitely a high. And just seeing designers who I grew up wearing and knowing and, aspiring to wear, just seeing their collections come down the runway, it's pretty thrilling.
Are there any challenges? You see the glamour. Are there any downsides or challenges that you see within Fashion Week that people don't really talk about?
Oh, well, I mean, obviously, yeah, there's so much, but I sort of steer away from that. I just go. I don't have to deal with a lot of it. I go, I get to sit and see the shows, and then I'm off to the next show. So for me, I'm not dealing with a lot of the nitty-gritty stuff that other people do. But, a lot of the models can have tough times. But I've actually seen models fall and pass out because they have to stand for such long periods of time. And actually, one time it was awful. It was a Catherine Melandrino presentation. So presentation is when the models are sort of in one position, they stand, and it's not a runway show, but the people come in and they go from model to model and they get to see. So the models have to stand there for a long time, usually in heels. And so this poor model just passed out, hit her face on the ground, was bleeding everywhere. It was just horrible. So, it's harder than it looks, and they don't really get as much credit as they deserve.
Yeah, I can imagine so. My research showed, it came up in my research that you've been featured in New York Times and Marie Claire. And how did you stay grounded during those kinds of situations?
Well, it's very easy because I know that those things happen and then they're done and nobody's thinking about it the next day.
That's true,
So
right?
I've been doing this a long time, so it's very easy to stay grounded.
Yeah.
It's a big deal for me. And for one day, everyone is, thrilled
talking
about
about
it.
you. Yeah.
And then that's it. Then they forget.
Yeah.
So it becomes a humbling experience where sometimes you think you're going to get that one thing out and then there's that gap.
Right.
Now, do you do those articles in the midst of writing a book? Are you balancing more than?
I don't really do articles anymore. I did in the beginning for a while, but not so much anymore. And a lot of those credits that you saw was me being interviewed in the Times and Marie Claire. I have done some writing for the magazines also, but mostly it's me being interviewed for them, which is a lot less pressure. Yeah. Writing a book is such a specific endeavor that I tend to stick to that and then the podcasting. And that pretty much takes up a ton of time.
Yeah. Podcasting takes up a ton of time for sure.
I know.
And now that, I've had the experience of writing a book with Dennis, writing a book takes up a lot of time too.
Oh, you have to be so single-minded.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
So let's talk about this a little bit. How do you, what's your approach for the career process for a new book? Like, how do you actually sit there and ideate and figure out what you're going to put in there?
I get an idea and I sit with it for a few days. And if I can't sleep because I'm thinking so much about this idea, then I know it's a good idea. So then I have to bring it to my agent, make sure she thinks it's a good idea and that she can sell it, because that's very important. I don't want to spend, months and months working on a proposal that's not going to go anywhere, because that's a lot of time. So, it's probably what everyone does. You write a proposal and, and then you wait till someone wants to do it. And, knock on wood, that's happened more times than not. So I'm very thankful about that. And then I jump right in. I have to immerse myself in a project. Otherwise, there's no point in doing it.
Yeah, I can resonate with that 100%.
Talk about the emotions when your first book got picked up.
Oh my gosh, it was the biggest thrill because, coming from an acting background, you hear no 99% of the time. So I was very used to that. Like, I thought when people applied for like civilian type jobs, like regular office jobs or whatever, that there were hundreds of people applying also, because that's all I knew from growing up as an actor, because you're going up against hundreds and hundreds of people. So, for me, it was like very slim chance that you would ever get any job. So when I got the call, my grandmother was staying with me, which was such a thrill because I got to tell her in person and I saw her face and she was so excited. So that was amazing.
That's fun. Yeah, that's
my gosh,
fun. Yeah.
So that was the most special part, that she was here for that.
I'm sitting there thinking, it just as you're talking about that, your career path, and sometimes people go for a job and it's not as competitive. You pick the most competitive markets ever for a job. You're in acting, fashion, writing. You like a challenge.
Like a challenge, yeah. I'm not daunted. I think I was probably just too young in the beginning to realize that it was going to be that hard. But, but I did it. So that's good.
Well, I'm a college professor as well, and I run a success program in a college. And one of the things I talk to my students about is, say you go to college for 4 years and your only goal is to graduate college in 4 years. That's a lot of time to be excited when you get that. When you're doing these projects, do you have to set up small intermediate goals and different goals as a sense of accomplishment throughout your journey?
No.
How do you do it?
Just getting to do it. It's not lost on me. So I'm thrilled to get the book in the first place. So that's enough to sustain me until the book is ready to come out. I love what I do so much that I don't need a goal, because I've already reached the goal because I'm doing the book. So for me, that's it. And I just, if I'm doing it, I want to do it as well as anybody possibly could. So that's really my goal, to keep doing, better and better work as I go along.
Do you experience writer's block along the way, and how do you overcome that?
I don't, because I write nonfiction, so it's much easier for me than someone who writes fiction.
That's for sure. I would think that that's the case.
Right. I can always sort of jumpstart anything because it has a basis in, in facts.
Right. So you could just start with a nice outline with iteration of facts and just, expand upon all of that, which is cool.
Right.
Project Runway, the show that changed fashion. Yes. Can you share a behind the scenes story from that?
Oh, so I wrote, writing the Project Runway book. So I loved the show. So when I got that call to do that book, that was fantastic. That was another one that came to me, thankfully. That was wonderful. So I got to go on the set of the show and watch as they filmed and talked to people. I got to meet and work with Heidi Klum in her hotel, which was cool. She's a very, very good collaborator because she did the introduction for the book. I got to work with Harvey Weinstein.
Wow.
I know.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
I had no bad experiences. I was never alone with him. I mean, when you work with Harvey Weinstein, there's a lot of liaisons that you have to go through. So,
Yeah.
I was never personally in a room alone with him. I actually even only met him for the first time after the book was published at a Project Runway fashion show.
So knowing that's not the case, how do you deal with those? Because, one of the things that we talk about, and you're continuously reaching your apex by getting these projects that are just major, major achievements and accomplishments, and you have obstacles and challenges such as the one that you just mentioned. How do you deal with those obstacles along the way like that? Like, how do you stay centered and grounded and focus on what you do and block out the noise?
Well, when that happened, I talked to my manager at the time, and he said, don't do anything. Just don't say anything. You're better off. It's going to blow over. Nobody's going to think about it. And if you talk about it, it's just going to make it worse. But I had seen her after that, and she was fine, and everything seemed to be fine. I don't know. I guess she's, I'm entitled to write how I see it, and she's entitled to say what she wants, and that's okay. I only have good intentions, and I didn't even think that was such a negative thing. I actually just said that she, butted heads with Tim Gunn, and that was really pretty much it. And she just didn't like that. I also wrote nice things about her too.
It's funny how people will pick up on the one negative thing and extrapolate that to the whole project, right?
I know.
It's just how it's human nature, I guess.
Right? I know. Yeah. And it was a tiny little section of the book. It wasn't like it was even a whole chapter. It was like not even a whole page.
Yeah.
It was so insignificant. And what I always do 100% of the time is the people who I interview, I don't have to, but I choose to send them everything I'm writing about them, get their approval. Because if they're not happy, I don't want to print it. So I've had people that say, I don't like the way I was portrayed here. I don't feel like the way I meant it is how it's coming across. And I've worked with them and, we've changed it and made it representative of how they feel. So, I'm so happy. So that's why it bothered me that she was upset, because I work so hard to make sure that I'm representing people in the way that they want to put forth. So, someone is always going to be unhappy.
Well, when you're talking about 75 years, the Tonys, that's a tall task you take on.
I know.
You talk about the amount of interviews you had. Kudos to you for being, wanting people to appreciate your work and feel like the truth's being told.
Well, thank you. It's really about them, though. It's about making sure they're happy with the way they're being represented. They were gracious enough to do an interview, so I wanted to make sure they're happy with it.
It's interesting. One of my next questions was going to be, how do you define, what are some habits or practices that allow you to stay at the top of the game? I mean, that obviously is one right there.
Yeah, I think you have to, because I'm not looking to catch it. There's certain people who tell me things that are so off the subject, and really they don't realize that they're not portraying themselves in the best light. So I'll protect them in some cases. And that's very important to me, to be honest in what I write, but to also make sure I'm not looking to catch anybody and expose them in a moment where maybe they said something they're not looking to put out in the public.
Eila, how do you define success, and has your definition changed over time?
Probably, so my definition of success is continued work. That's what's important to me, to just keep going and keep having a career. In the beginning, just getting published was my idea of success. So I think that for me anyway, I just want to keep pushing and, getting to the next level.
Yeah.
I mean, it would have been very easy those 8 years to give up and, say, well, I gave it my best shot. But I figured, well, why would I stop pursuing what I want to do? Time is going to pass by anyway. So, all right, it's taking a long time. But then once I got published, then I got the next book and the next book, and it gets so much easier. So, I think that if you have a goal, you have to just stick with it.
Yeah. You have like a breadth of work here, so we could go through a few of them,
Sure.
right? Designing Broadway.
Oh my gosh, that's
So you like intersect theater and fashion. Like what inspired you to do that?
well. So I kind of knew this designer. I didn't really know him, but I had seen his work. And Derek McLean, he's a set designer actually, and I was just so fascinated. I knew nothing about set design, but I had gone to theater my whole life, worked in theater, obviously, and I just thought his work was so interesting because everything I saw that he did, you would never realize it was the same designer because it was so vastly different. And so, I don't know, I just wanted to explore that and learn about what he did. So I got in touch with him and he was interested in doing a book, but he's so modest that he felt like his work alone wouldn't be worthy. So he said, well, I would like to do a book, yes, but why don't we reach out to the whole community of Broadway designers? That's what we did. So I think it was a better idea than I had initially. And so we do a design of his and we take another designer who did a show with a similar theme, like, color. And so Derek designed a show called How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying. So we compare that to another designer, David Rockwell, and his set for Hairspray. Both were very colorful sets. And then I talk about how they each approach the same type.
Yeah,
of
that Hairspray set was quite colorful for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. So very cool. It's amazing to me when I went through and did the research, like just the breadth of what you've done in your career. It's pretty remarkable.
Thank you.
So makeover from within.
Yes. So
Tell us about that. You delve into themes of hardship, self-discovery, like everything we talk about here about reaching your apex, right? So tell us about that.
Well, I worked with my dear friend, Ty Hunter. Ty is a stylist. He works with Billy Porter right now, but for most of her career, he worked with Beyonce and from the beginning. And he has quite a story. And I knew that his story would make a fantastic book. So I asked Ty if he wanted to collaborate, and he did. So it's a hybrid of his memoir, but really told in a way where it's almost like a self-help book to empower people who are going through similar hardships like what he went through. So it's very much a hybrid, and it was interesting because I'm not used to telling someone else's story. I spent, it's really just his voice through me. And so, that was interesting and a whole new challenge. I learned a lot writing that book.
Yeah. Did you have to find his voice for him, like in your writing? Like explain that process.
No, we did. We talked all the time. Plus I knew him for years anyway, but it was important to get his voice, but it was easy because it was his words, just sort of guided by me. So it was really, we told his story together, but very much in his voice. That was important. It couldn't be the way I would tell it. It had to be the way he told it.
Yes.
So, and, he really trusted me, and I never wanted to betray that.
Yeah. I have a follow-up to this. And what do you think the role of storytelling is in what you're trying to convey?
I think that, so for nonfiction, I think honesty is the most important thing. It has to be real. Otherwise, there's no point in writing it if it's nonfiction. So that for sure. And I think it has to be relatable, even though he's with Beyonce at, presidential inaugurations in the Super Bowl, his story is so relatable to so many people. And that's the point. And that's what I really wanted to break it down into.
Eila, how can storytelling inspire others to live at their apex?
Well, I mean, it's because you get to see how people approach something that maybe you want to do and didn't didn't see it quite the same way. So, so through storytelling and through other people's stories, you can see, well, they had the goal and this was their idea. And maybe that's not right for me, but if I take their philosophy and I apply it to what I want to do, maybe I can find a different way to get where I want to be if it's not working out.
All right, cool.
Do you have are there any upcoming projects or aspirations that you have that you want to drop on us today?
I do. Well, I have a book proposal that's in the works. I can tell you that it has something to do with Hal Prince, the director and producer. Carol Burnett and I, we bonded over Hal Prince. And we started a campaign because we wanted to have a theater named in honor of Hal Prince. And we're still working on that together. But I thought that he also deserves a book about his work. So that's what I'm working on. And I'm hoping that that's going to become a book very soon. And then I have my podcast that's a companion to the Tony Awards book.
I wanted to get into that a little bit. So it's good that we have this segue.
Yeah, so it's called Behind the Awards, and we talk to a lot of award winners, Tony winners and Emmys, Oscars, Golden Globes, anything you can think of. And, they're like this. It's a conversation. It's not a Q&A. It's just, we get into who that person is, how they got to where they're going. And just, it's fun. It's a fun hang with these people.
Yeah, isn't it cool? Like doing podcasting. So when did you have the idea to start a podcast?
So this is my second podcast. Did one for 4 years called Jiffy Pop Culture. And that was, movies.
Yeah.
Mostly analysis of movies in a fun way with, my co-host who's a stand-up comedian and hilarious, Frank Liotti. And so I like talking and I love the Tony book and I just wanted to continue on it, but again, in a different way and a more universal way because there's only so many Tony winners and I had already spoken to most of the ones that are living. So
yeah.
I figured this is a way to open it up. So, now we have a lot of people in theater, but also a lot of people not in theater.
Yeah, I've seen it. I've seen your podcast. I think it's great.
Thank you.
And to all the listeners out there, you got to go check that out, and we'll have links to it in the description below for sure. But Dennis, I think it's probably time for your question.
Eila, what is some advice you would give to your younger self or someone that's looking to join a journey similar to yours?
All right. Well, stay motivated, work harder than anyone else will, and don't worry as much as you did.
Isn't that so apropos every time? That's so many guests have gotten that question, and that don't worry so much has come up so many times.
I guess so.
I think it's only after a little bit of life experience that we have the retrospective ability to see that. But that was pretty cool.
Back then, I thought everything was like, if one thing didn't work out, then nothing would ever work out. But that's not the way life is.
That's that young black and white thinking, so to speak,
yes,
right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Now I see all the gray.
Right.
We can't leave this episode because I love Broadway.
Oh,
Can you
good.
give me your top 3 shows?
Well, I can tell you my top 3 shows that are playing right now that I think people should run out and see. So Death Becomes Her is so much fun. Smash, I just got to see the second performance. Incredible. If you're a fan of the TV show, you're going to get everything you love about that and more, and in a much more fun way. And the third, let's see. The third is harder because I have to think a little bit more. Those are easy. Glengarry Glen Ross. The cast is just unbelievable.
The Death Becomes Her, is that kind of based on that movie with Bruce Willis?
It's exactly based on it. And all the illusions and stunts they do in the movie, they do live on stage. And it's so much fun to see it right in front of you. Like the head turns around and the holes in the body and all the things that are in the movie are in the play too.
That's
fall
really
down the
fascinating.
staircase. It's great.
Well, that's great. That's a great movie.
Yes.
Yeah. So let's do a bullet of favorite people you interviewed for your Tony Awards book.
Okay.
Top 3.
Judith Light, Carol Burnett. Is it okay that I said her before and I'm saying her again?
Yeah, of course.
She's
Say
just
Carol
so
Burnett
amazing.
20 times.
You can say
I
it 3
love
times,
Carol.
whatever.
She's the GOAT.
I
Right?
know. And I can't just say the next one is my favorite because there were so many favorites, but Billy Crystal.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
I'm going to take this in a different spin now.
Okay.
3 favorite fashion designers. That's my first question.
Okay, that's easy. Michael Kors, Michael Costello, because I love him dearly, and Donna Karan.
Powerhouses.
You know, on Friday, was it Thursday, I was wearing a Michael Kors jacket.
Plug right there.
Hey, there you go.
Excuse me. How about 3 models that have stood out to you in your experiences?
Coco Rocha. She's a great, great model. She can do anything. Tyson Beckford.
I met Tyson Beckford at an event at Fashion Week years ago.
Yeah,
Wow.
he's great. He's great. And who else? I guess Heidi Klum, because I don't think anyone's been smarter about their career.
Yeah, because Heidi Klum. That's it.
How amazing that she did the introduction in your book.
Yeah. And she's great to work with. It's so obvious why she's so successful just from watching her for 5 minutes. She's just a great worker, super smart. She knows what she's doing, and she just gets it done.
Dennis, this has been awesome, man.
Eila, you're at the top of your game. You were
Thank you.
such an amazing guest. It has been fashion, writing, Broadway. These are 3 things that I love in life, and I think you gave the audience some great lessons. But something that really stands out to me is you have a lot of confidence in yourself. You're really self-motivated, and as I said earlier, you've tackled a profession that is very difficult to get in, and you just keep going. So kudos to you. And I'm really honored that you accept the invitation to the show, because I think you're going to be a great guest for our listeners. We can't wait to share it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So can you share ways to follow you, get in touch with you, and all of that, so that the
Absolutely.
listeners can tag along and follow along?
Well, so the best way is on Instagram at Eila Mell. Are you going to put my name so people,
Yeah,
because it's a hard one to spell.
I'll put it all down in the description. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Sure.
So Instagram is really the best way. And if you want to email me, you can just hit that contact on Instagram, and you can get me that way. And also at Behind the Awards on Instagram too. That's my podcast page.
Yeah.
And we do a lot of fun Broadway stuff there.
Yeah, definitely follow it. I follow both pages. You're gonna see us post this thing up in the next few days, and it'll be a fun one.
That'll be, yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming in today.
Thank you for having me. So fun.
Dennis, you wanted to wrap it up.
It's go time.
Go time.